What's up, everybody? My name's Matt Hawley, and welcome back to the Arabia Steamboat Museum's YouTube page. First of all, happy holidays to you. I hope y'all had a wonderful Thanksgiving. It was actually on Thanksgiving that I had the idea for today's video, and Thanksgiving is kind of the kickoff of the holiday season. And during the holidays, we bring our friends and family together, and food is such a central part of those gatherings. And I thought today, let's talk about food. And there are three elements of today's video that I'd like to share with you, two of which are stories. The first is a story that almost everyone who has been to the museum has heard before, but it's one of the best stories that we have here. And the second story is one that almost no one has ever heard. Now, before we get into the actual stories, I think it's important that we kind of explain or set the table on how exactly we found food on board a steamboat that was buried in the mud for 132 years. Now, when we found the Arabia, we found it 45 feet beneath the surface. Now, when you are this far down into the earth, there is no oxygen, there is no sunlight, and it is a consistent cold temperature. Nature had preserved this collection just like a refrigerator preserves our food today, only nature did it almost perfectly. So perfect, in fact, that when we got down to this boat, we actually found out what a 132-year-old pickle tastes like.
A miracle of nature, I guess. Things such as perfume and liquor and things like that should have been spoiled, were not. The pickles were good. I tried some of them. They were still fresh and sweet.
Now, this is Jerry, one of the original 5 partners, and no surprise, Jerry worked in the restaurant business. And as Jerry loves to say, he just had to know what a 132-year-old pickle tasted like.
Yeah, well, I'm a guy that's in the restaurant business, and restaurant people like to sample things. You always have to taste it before you can sell it. And it was very good, very crispy and sweet.
Now, after Jerry ate a 132-year-old pickle, the other guys at the dig site, well, they watched Jerry real carefully for a few days just to see how this guy was going to do. But it turns out nature had preserved the collection so incredibly well that Jerry eats the pickle, lives to tell the story, and then goes on to sample just about everything. And when I say everything, I mean 132-year-old butter, cheese, salt pork, we found fruit. I mean, the list just goes on and on.
There's currants and raspberries and blueberries. There's ketchup also.
And 33 years later, we're still watching Jerry, just a little bit. We think he's gonna be okay.
Anyway, my wife went home, and next morning she raised my insurance by $100,000. But I'm still here today.
Now, all this food was being found in glass jars, had a watertight seal on it protecting it from the river water. Now, we also found things like sardines and oysters, which were being shipped up in tin cans. Tin cans, not watertight. So when Jerry found those, he picked them up, looked at them for a minute, smelled them, put them right back down. He's like, no, I'll pass on that one. Good call, Jerry. Glad you're still with us.
Actually, I'm 118 years old and haven't aged a day since then. You like that?
And that brings us to our second story, which is one of my personal favorites here in the collection. One of the most popular questions that we get here at the museum is, what is your favorite artifact? And if you were to ask these 5 guys, the original partners, what their favorite thing was, they'd all say the story. It was the story of the Arabia and the collection being brought up the Missouri River, stocking up towns along the frontier, and the story of them getting down there and finding it, bringing it up, and then sharing it with the world. But if you really press them and you say you have to find one thing that is your personal favorite, Dave tells the story of finding these jars of food. Now, if you come to the museum and you walk around, you see the pictures on the walls, you realize there isn't a single photograph of Dave in the museum. He was the photographer. He's the one snapping all those photos. And one day, Dave had found these jars of food, And he was cleaning them off, and being the photographer that he is, he set up a little scene and he snapped a photo. And then he took a step back and realized he is the first person ever to photograph pre-Civil War food in colored photography. Never been done before. Color photography wasn't even available until the 20th century, so nothing from before the Civil War could have survived long enough to have been photographed in the early days of color photography. But because the steamboat was buried so far down into the earth and nature preserved this collection so incredibly well, a refrigerator repairman was able to take the first colored photograph of pre-Civil War food. Now that might not seem like a big deal on the surface, but it's not very often you can say that you were the first person to photograph something. Most of the things that we go and take photos of, someone's already done it before, and that's okay. I mean, the joy of photography is just getting out there and doing it, but to be the first person to say you photographed that's pretty special. And here it is, the first photograph of pre-Civil War food in color photography. On the right, we have cherries. On the left, we have currants. Now, if you're like me, you're sitting there and asking yourself, what is a currant? I thought the same thing. I had to look it up, and I want to read this just so I get it right. Currants are small berries that grow on shrubs and are more like gooseberries. With the sweet and bright acidic berry flavor, currants are delicious when eaten fresh. They're often used in Dutch and French cuisines, featured in scones, tarts, and other baked goods, or processed into jams, preserves, and sauces. Well, that sounds delicious. And that brings us to the third and final element of today's video. And it's not a story, it has nothing to do with the Arabia collection, it's actually a request. That this holiday season, as you gather around with your friends and family and you're about to enjoy that holiday meal, take a minute to really appreciate the food that you have and how easy it was for you to get. There's never been a time in history where it has been easier for us to get food. Most of you probably didn't hunt for your food today, and I'm certain you guys didn't wait for a steamboat to bring it up the river and deliver it to you. You needed it, you went to the store, you bought it, and that's it. And on that note, if you're able, if you have the means to do so, I would highly encourage you this holiday season to go out and find a local food bank or charitable organization that you can donate food to. The last couple of years have not been easy on anyone, especially those who rely on donated items. If you're in the Kansas City area, I'm actually going to link below a number of organizations that are still receiving donations. And if you think you'd like to help, but it's really hard this time of year to find time to go out and deliver food to a charitable organization, the good news is most of these groups have online donation forms where you can actually make a donation right with your phone. And the truth is, most of these groups would prefer a cash donation because then they can go out and then make specific purchases for those they're serving. That's all I got for you guys today. Again, thank you so much for watching. And this holiday season, enjoy your food, appreciate it. If you're able to donate, I think it's always a really good thing to try and give back to your community. If you haven't hit the subscribe button below, go ahead and just hit that right now. That way you will be notified the next time we upload a video. And I guess we'll just see y'all in the next one.